Management Research.
Hello and welcome to the Management Research podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene. Hello and welcome to the next episode in the Strategic Management mini-series of the Management Research podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eugene Bogodistov. Today we continue talking about the 5 forces framework by Porter, and we start working with the next force, which is the rivalry between competitors. This is one of the forces that you have to take into account if you decide whether you want to join a market or not, or if you are in the market, you need to think about the threat of other firms that are already in this market. Here there are several drivers. In this episode we're going to talk about 2 of them. The first is the concentration of competitors, and the second one is the diversity of competitors, because I believe that these 2 drivers are related. In the event of concentration, we talk about how many firms are in the market, how many firms are your direct competitors. Let's assume we have only 3 poles in this variable. The first one is the monopoly, where the market is dominated by the one firm. The second option, there is oligopoly, the market is dominated by few firms. And the third one is a full competition, where there are plenty of firms competing against each other. And in all the situations we have different implications for your position in the market. If the market is dominated by a single firm, for instance as Microsoft or Google or other firms, then the firm has a lot of these firms have a lot of power over the price for goods it sells. Theoretically, if you are a monopolist, which actually is seldom the case because mostly the states try to regulate it, then you can set almost any price you want. And in this event, of course, the states try to intervene and try to reduce the price and make them based on the consumer value or the added value for the consumer. In the second example, we have the oligopoly, which means a few firms dominating the market, and the competition happens, interestingly, not on the level of prices, but on the level of marketing. So these firms, they try to compete against each other using the marketing mechanism in order to make the customers pay more. If you are in this type of markets, then you have to focus on your marketing endeavors rather than on pricing. And finally, if there is a huge competition happening on the market, then the only way to succeed is to actually cut the prices and go as low as possible, so most likely go to the level of costs of the final product or service plus very small margin. Because if there is a lot of competition, most likely the firms are very similar in this event. It means they have more or less the same costs, and this is really a big battle of prices what happens on very dense markets. If you want to know how it works, just go to any of the commodity markets, those markets that sell pencils or pens or different types of flour, different types of milk and so on. You will see that their prices are very close to the cost level, and as soon as they try to increase the price by a very little amount, the competitors will just be better just because they will offer the same milk or the same eggs or the same flour, or very similar flour, to a bit lower price. The second driver that is related to the concentration of competitors is the diversity of competitors. Because we need to know that some firms that are competitive, they are actually very diverse, not in relation to the product, but to the relation of their cost structure, strategy and management practices. And I have a good example that I usually give to my students is the Honda and Harley Davidson. If you look at some models of Honda and some models of Harley Davidson motorcycles, you will notice that they look very similar. I sometimes show the picture and ask my students to distinguish what is where, and mostly people think it's both pictures of Harley Davidson, while one of the motorcycles that I show is actually the Honda motorcycle. Although the products look similar, they have different production costs, they have different origins, they have different management style, which leads to different cost that they have in order to produce a product, and then the margins they can achieve in the final price. Because the final price may be very different, and maybe, or actually it's actually the case, the Honda motorcycles are much cheaper, but mostly it is driven not only by the outlook and the cost of the motorcycle itself. Because any firm, in order to work, needs not only to have a production but also secondary functions, though that support this production. Their sales departments, their IT departments, their HR departments, their research and development departments, they also cost money. And depending on where they are located, depending on how they are doing, depending on what actually happens within the firms will differ drastically. And why is it important related to the concentration of competitors? That we often look at the product only, and we believe that these two products are very similar, like two types of flour. But it can happen that the main differentiation between the firms is not the final product, but actually how it is being produced, where it comes from, what is the management style, what kind of costs we have within the organization, how well are the primary and secondary processes within this firm automated or optimized, improved, and so on. It can happen that you cannot go below a certain price while the other firm with the same or very similar product can do it. In this event, you need to think about your cost structure, about your strategy, and actually costs related to strategy, and the management practices. What can you do better than other firms in order to reduce the cost of production? As you see, rivalry among competitors is a huge force that has impact on how you can position your product, what kind of prices you can have, and what kind of competition you will engage to. Will it be a red ocean of very competitive firm, or maybe it will be a blue ocean? It may look like a red ocean, just because of the number of products on the market. But if you are clever, if you made a good strategy, your firm will have a better cost structure, a more efficient strategy, a more effective strategy, and better management practices, as well as optimized primary and secondary processes that will lead to an opportunity for you to reduce the price without actually hardly impacting the margin that you have on your product or your services. I hope it was helpful, I hope it was interesting. I'll see you in the next episode, where we're going to talk about the next driver that has impact on the force of rivalry between competitors. Wish you all the best, and bye-bye.